Hey everybody, today I'm going to do a series of videos and I'm going to call them the Capital Raising Crash Course. So a lot of people want to know how to raise capital. If you haven't done it before, 90% chance you're going to do it wrong and end up in a mess. So this is going to give you a really good overview. And now where does that problem really lie? Usually it comes from doing things in the backwards order. And raising capital in pretty much every country is a highly regulated industry, which means that you don't have free speech. Free speech around raising capital in the United States was stripped as a right in the 1930s with the passage of the Securities and Exchange Act. So over time, over the past 8 years, the US laws have been liberalized to restore a little bit of free speech, but that's not really enough to succeed thoroughly. So here's the big pitfall. Most people don't think about raising capital until it's too late. So if you're starting a company that you have any idea that it's going to need capital to succeed, the time to start raising money is now. And a big part of the reason is it takes time. You know, when you're raising capital, you're selling something called an equity. Or a security, to be exact. So security can be equity in your company. If you're selling a loan offering, that's another kind of security. So whenever you're selling money, you're selling an investment, that's a regulated conversation in most parts of the world. Now, not only that, but because it's such a unique thing, it's not like you're going to a farmer's market and, you know, buying a banana or buying, you know, a bag of carrots that you can see and feel. So it takes time to build trust, and it also takes time to comply with the laws. So for most of my students, I say if you're going to put in about 4 hours a week, you'll be starting to receive capital, or at least the indications of that, within 3 months. It can go faster if you have more time to dedicate, but the other problem is that most entrepreneurs also start their business in a backwards way, so they're constantly running out of money, and then they come to me thinking that somehow I'm going to give them a check because they're broke. That's just not how it works. So let's go over some of the major steps. So the main idea about raising capital like a professional is that you're building your own syndicate. And a syndicate is like an investor club for you. You know, professional fundraisers build syndicates into which they can sell deals, but those are called investment bankers. If you want to hire an investment banker to raise money for you, you're typically going to have to come up with about $100,000 up front just for them to work with you and to prepare you so that when they go out and try to sell you, it's really not just your company, it is you, the CEO of your company, and then of course your plans and your dreams. When they want to go out and sell that, it takes time to prepare all that and to get you prepared to receive. So most people who I'm working with are not trying to raise, you know, typically $10 million is the smallest amount that a professional fundraiser will work with, and on commission. So I don't get a commission. I just teach you how to do everything like a pro, but how to do it on your own. So what's the most important thing is building your syndicate, building your investor club. Like that should be, it's almost day one. And so there's only 2 real preliminary steps before that, maybe 3. First is getting your story in words. That's what I call your leader story. It's a short story about what you want to do. It's not a business plan. Business plans are almost completely useless. Almost everyone that uses a business plan is doing it just so they can get a government-backed loan, a small business association loan. I don't recommend that path because it's a good way to lose all your money, whatever you're backing that note with, like it's your house or something. You should not be starting a company with debt unless you absolutely know what you're doing. And if you're listening to this video, you probably don't. So the goal is to get your syndicate started. That you can do literally within a week or 2 if you follow the right steps. So the right step is you get your story in words, and then you develop your business model, which I call your story in numbers. And the business model is basically a type of a projection that's tied into your milestones and goals. And so when you do this financial projection and you do it around your goals as opposed to what you think you have in the bank, you'll find where all the shortfalls are in terms of money. And based on that, now you've got a good story to tell people. The next step from there is beginning to design your investment product. But you don't have to have that done to start building a syndicate, and here's the reason why. For example, in the United States, there's something called a cooling off period. So you can go and recruit investors. You can make public advertising to get people to join your syndicate, your investor club, but you can't show them any investment offers until 30 days later, unless you're doing one of the few public offer options that are available in the United States and also many countries around the world. But even if you're doing those, it takes time to get people, to trust you and to tell your story and to answer questions and get them comfortable with taking the kind of risk you're going to ask them to take. So what I advocate is building a paid investor community, because when they pay you, now you've got a prior business relationship, and that puts you in good standing with most of the regulatory bodies around the world, because you're not just building like a big email list, you're actually getting paid for the value of being a leader. So those are the core steps. We'll go through them in a little more detail. Anyway, once you've got your story in words and you've got your story in numbers, then you're going to design what is it that I'm going to sell these customers for my investment product, and you design that. And I call that really your capital plan, because when you're selling equity, it's a funny game, because your company isn't really worth much in the beginning. And if you say, well, if I had $10 million, I could change the world. But if you've got an idea on paper, and if somebody were to give you $10 million, you would probably lose control of your company. In fact, that reminds me of another piece, which is the core agreements that need to go into any business really before you can really receive money. And again, I'll do a video separately on these, but the core agreements are your governance agreement, your ownership agreement, and your staffing agreement. So even if you're just a company of one person, you still need those kind of agreements. They don't have to be fancy. You don't necessarily need a lawyer to put them together, but you need to have the concepts that I'll be detailing in the video on that topic. So you can see that what we're doing here is we're actually starting to raise money almost from day one, literally within 2 weeks or so. You're starting to have those conversations. You're priming the pump. You're going and recruiting the people and building that anticipation for your offer. And that's really the cool thing. If you look at, like what Tesla did with the Cybertruck, that was a pretty long lead time. You don't need that much, but they built the support for the product before they sold the product. And this is the secret to almost any successful business, is that almost everyone I mentor, they make their product first, and that's almost always the wrong place to go. The right place to go is developing your market first. So if your product is an investment product, you want to develop the market for that investment product first before you start spending money on developing it. And then I touched on this in an earlier video, but another piece of the puzzle is getting your securities lawyer lined up and hiring that securities lawyer in a way where you don't spend any money out of pocket. So if you follow my instructions, you can raise money with hardly any expenditure of cash out of your own pocket. It is labor intensive, and that's why it's so vital to do the labor in the right order. If you do it in the right order, you'll be getting money within 3 months if you have a reasonable concept that's valid. And we can talk about those things. You can look down below and book an exploratory call with me, and I'll assess you in 15 minutes and see whether I think I can help you and coach you and get you to solve, get you on the right track for raising capital if that's what you need. So without much further ado, let's get into the capital raising crash course.